My grandfather always had a farm whenever I was a little kid, even before we had any property. So I spent all the summers out there. The business was always the number one thing. Even when I was a kid, like I said, I didn't play a lot of ball. During the summers, I would go cut and bale hay, from about the time I was 12 years old to the time I was 16. I spent all my summers cutting and baling hay. I just wanted to make money. Your money has to work for you. Money's a tool. And once a guy can realize that money's not for spending, it's not to go necessarily buy everything that you want. It's just a tool. It's no different than that cow sitting out there or that piece of equipment sitting there. If it's not working, then it's not. You're not gaining anything.
Welcome back to the Wealthy Cowboy Show. Today we have Brandon Taylor on. I've been trying to get him on for a while. They have Taylor Land and Cattle and down around Comanche, Rising Star. He's part of that. They got their own operation with Colby Hunt with Cobra Cattle. And then he's got a business here in Saginaw. So we're going to dive into all that. How's it going?
Going good.
Good.
Real good. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's go into... I'm excited to get to sit down with you because I don't know about your background really at all. I know y'all have a big company in Saginaw and a badass ranch down there, but I'm glad to sit down and talk about it all. If you would just kind of go into your background, how you grew up and where.
Well, I grew up in the steel fabrication industry. That's kind of my background. My father's always done that. That's our family is known for is steel fabrication. And that's what our business here is in Fort Worth. How I got into the ranching and the farming is my father always, his rule was you make your money in the city and you take it to the country.
Yeah.
So it was always a nest egg for him to buy the land. Mm-hmm. My father was never interested much in the operation side of the land. Most of it, he would buy it and then lease it out. Mm-hmm. And then as I came up, growing up, I took more of an interest in the operations. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I led into the ranching and the farming side of it. Is taking over the operations that I would take the leases back the land that he was leasing, I would take back and put some cows on it. And then he got interested and then together we started growing it. Mm-hmm. But I've always been more on the operations side of it. And my grandfather always had a farm whenever I was a little kid, even before we had any property. So I spent all the summers out there. My brother-in-law, my oldest brother-in-law, I guess when I was 8 or 9 years old, my sister married him, and he was from the Rising Star area, which is how we ended up out there in that area. Was my sister wanted to buy a place, so my dad bought a place by their place, and that was kind of the start of it. So I would spend all my summers and all my weekends working on their place and my grandfather's place.
Yeah,
and so that's how the seed got planted. I like the operation side of it because that's all I ever did. So I didn't play much sports and things like that. I pretty much was farming and ranching on the weekends as a kid, running tractors, cutting and baling hay. So, and then as I took over the operations up here in Fort Worth, my father and I, we split our operations out in Comanche County, and I've got my operation and he's got his. Mm-hmm. And so I've just continually trying to grow the land out there like he did, but also trying to improve the operation at the same time.
And where do you think he came up with that, like putting it back into the farming and ranching side? Like, does he just enjoy that? Did he grow up in that area, or is he just doing it for an investment somewhere to put his money?
No, it was always safe. Mm-hmm. Land was always a safe place for him to put money. Historically, land is always going up in value. Mm-hmm. Obviously sometimes we have a little bit of slide back, but if you look at a 10-year span, it's always going up. So it was always a safer place. And if you watch the dollar value, the dollar's up and down. So putting in a bank is never safe, So it was always a safe place for him to put money in land because it was always there if he ever needed it. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to your money's always got to be working for you. And if it's sitting in a bank, it's not working for you because the interest you get paid on the sitting in the bank is nothing. It's pennies. So that was the idea behind it is if we're not growing our business here in Fort Worth, if we're not having to expand there and take the profits and dump back into the company, we've got to find somewhere to put it. So the land was always the safest place to do it. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. And it's fun for us if you enjoy that lifestyle to
Absolutely.
Be able to go buy your own, and then you can run it however you want to. If you want to put cows and calves there or yearlings or just use it for hay. I mean, you're not tied to that lease, and you'll be able to operate it however you want, and you know that you're going to have it long term.
Right. I like the aspect. I'm always looking at 5 and 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. So I like seeing it from the day you get the place. I like to go by the really rough places. You know, typically they're the cheapest places out there. And then we'll turn around and improve those places and to try to see those places in 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years later and watch them mature and grow into a good, productive piece of ground. That's where I get most of my enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, and I've seen what y'all done. A lot of that country is growed up in briars and brush and stuff, and then y'all get them and clean them up and make them really good for running cattle on, and hay and crops and everything. Y'all really changed the land.
Right. You know, when I was growing up in that part of the world, it was primarily peanuts. And then I guess somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, they pulled all the peanuts out of that country, and nearly every coastal field you see in Comanche and Eastland County at one time was a peanut field. So the one thing about our area is it wasn't very productive for cattle. There wasn't a whole lot of cattle people. It was a lot of farmers. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of grass. So it's kind of a newer thing in our area, I would say, over the last 20 years, 25 years, is to try to take this old peanut ground, which is perfect for growing Bermuda grass, you know. So it's not something, we didn't have a lot of people there to lean on, I guess. So we had to try a lot of things for the first time ourselves, and then that didn't work, and we would try something else. And we finally, I would say in the last 4 years, I finally felt like we've got an operation. It's, you know, we're on track. We know where we want to go, and not trying to reinvent the wheel every day, which for 15 years, it seemed like every day we woke up, we're trying to reinvent the wheel. So, which was enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, but it's also nice to see it where it's at today.
Yeah. It's funny to see the difference in that country there. Like you said, it's good for growing that Bermuda grass, and those, like you said, it's a lot of old fields there. And we went up next door to one of y'all's places and caught a cow the other day, and you could tell it was an old, probably a peanut field, and it was not taken care of, and it was solid mesquite trees.
Mesquite trees, yes.
And, you know, probably the last 20 years or something is, you know, 15, 20 years of growth there in those mesquite trees, nobody taking care of it. And it sucks to see that go back, you know.
I built peanut hay on that pasture when I was in high school.
Yeah.
It was a peanut. Yep.
As somebody, you obviously enjoyed the farming and ranching and being outdoors as a kid, and that's what I enjoy also. But how did you learn that you needed to go build a business and make money elsewhere so you could come enjoy that on the back end? Because it took me a long time to figure it out. I was all through my 20s, and as a kid, that's all I did, and it's like play, you know. Even though you're getting paid to go work cows or whatever, it's fun, and it's not like work. But if you can go to town and build another business, it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to rely as much on that income. Right. So how was that? Did your dad instill that into
Absolutely.
you? Or?
Yeah, my father and my grandfather, my father is a by the gut. That's just the way he is. My grandfather was a structural engineer, so he is the numbers have to match, and I think I got a pretty good balance of both of them. So, but both of them always told me, you're not going to come out here and farm for a living and make generational wealth. You know, you're gonna have to go do something else, and you know it's hard. We all know that are in it. It's hard to go sell a calf crop and think about going and buying more country with that. So having something else that can afford the land, and then you just have to have an operation on top of it that affords the land and it can afford the improvements, you know, the taxes and things like that. So the business was always the number one thing. Even when I was a kid, like I said, I didn't play a lot of ball during the summers. I would go cut and bale hay, you know, from about the time I was 12 years old to the time I was 16. That's I spent all my summers custom cutting and baling hay. I just wanted to make money. I always looked at it. I can take 3 to 4 days a week and, you know, go make several $100, or I could go swim at the park. Yeah. You know, it just never interested me. So the business side was always there, you know, and that was instilled in me from the very beginning. And I always was around older men that worked hard, and I always sit back and try to figure out how did they get where they're at, and trying to take the shortcuts, essentially. I didn't necessarily have to do it all my way and wanted to figure it out. I've always been good about looking back and watching somebody else's operation and seeing how that operation was successful, whether it's in the steel operation or whether it's in the farming operation or whether it's in the cattle operation or real estate. I always like to kind of sit back and see what everybody else did, and then maybe go in there and try to tweak it a bit. But the business has always been the number one. And that was always instilled in me, is if you don't have this, then nothing else follows. You've got to take care of this. This is the business is the heart that pumps the blood, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I talk about it all the time, about finding a mentor or a model and the people around you, and being able to take their wins or their losses, their experiences, all that, and you can skip that,
Yes.
And you can also see if you do the things that they did, where you can end up, whether that's a broke drug head, if you go down that same path, this is where you end up, or a big crippled up old man or whatever that can't do anything. See what he did, and that's where you're going to end up. Or if it's a successful businessman or successful rancher or whatever, you can just follow those steps and just do as close what they did, and maybe skip some of the down times and stuff, skip some of that bad stuff. But you know where you're going to end up if you look at those older guys. Hudson Livestock Supplements is owned and ran by a ranching family that uses and tests their products on their own operation. By doing this, they're able to provide the highest quality product available and can direct you as to which one you might need for your specific operation. These tubs can help with breed back, weaning a larger calf, fly control, and helping the animals get all the nutrients and minerals they need. They can provide a solution for cattle, sheep, goats, horses, and wildlife in all different terrains and scenarios. Check out Hudson Livestock Supplements or ask your local feed store about carrying their products, and they are processing payments with us at Diversified Payments.
I've always said, don't take advice from somebody that's not where you want to be. And so I've always seeked out, so I'm not going to ask somebody that's in the steel industry how to make money on cows.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask somebody that's in the business of raising cattle how to make money in the steel business or real estate. So I've always leaned towards those people, like they say, don't be the smartest one in the room. And I live by that. I have every Monday, I have a leadership meeting in one of our businesses. And then I have another business that we have a leadership meeting on Wednesdays. And everybody that's around that table, in whatever part of the operation that they're in charge of, they are better than me in that part. So I don't ever take advice from I don't ever lead for or go ask for advice from somebody unless I truly feel like they're better than me, So, and I think that's important. I think you got to surround yourself with people that are better than you, because one, it makes you get up and you want to be as good as them. So it makes you kind of fight and try to learn and, add more arrows to your quiver. So surrounding yourself, like you said, with good people, that is my number one, goal, is to take the people around me. And if somebody's around me, if they're in my inner circle, which is a small inner circle, I promise you they're better than I am at whatever it is that they do. Yeah. Whether that's here in Fort Worth in the operations up here, if that's in Comanche in one of the ranching operations, those guys are better than I am. And my job is to make sure that they've got the tools to work, and make sure that I support them. And then outside of that, it's up to them to make things, the day to day.
Yeah, all the leaders that I've studied have been like that. It's not necessarily that they know everything or good at everything. They know their strengths and weaknesses. So their weaknesses, they can put somebody else there in that part of the operation to feed off of. Yep. Just like, I think a good president of the United States shouldn't just be the best person at everything. They just need to be the best at picking the right people to put in those
You're
spots.
Absolutely right. That's what your job as a leader is, put the right people in the right spots and then give them the tools. Is if they're growing, then you're growing. The whole operation's growing. And a lot of people lose track of that. And me coming up from my situation is a little bit different than some people starting from scratch, because I'll never say I started from scratch. My father spent a whole lifetime building a foundation, and I've got several siblings. There's 6 of us, and there's several of us that are very successful and have our own operations and are very good and well known in their own industry. And that comes from my father gave us this foundation. You know, he gave us a good, strong foundation that we weren't necessarily worried about making one mistake and losing everything. So we could stick our necks out there a little bit and try, you know, and try something new. And we always knew that if there was a problem, he was going to help us. So that's the but the difference between him and I is, in order for him to build that foundation, he was the one guy that started it from the scratch, that couldn't afford to put really good people around him because he had to wear every single hat. Well, when you wear every single hat, there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so much you can get done. So I saw that, and I saw that struggle to try to grow another business. And not that he was more than capable of doing that, but how much toll it took on him. And I always said, you know, I'm not gonna take that route. So the one thing I always said is, coming in underneath him, is I was going to make sure that I put people around me that could, when there was an idea, I'd come up with the idea, and I'd find someone like, who's a perfect person to carry that out. And then my job is to go find that person, put them in that role, and let them go out there and grow that aspect of the business. And in order to do that, or by doing that, we've been able to grow substantially over the last 20 years. And it's pretty interesting the way that I always tell my father said the same thing. You could put both of us in the same room and tell us both to go to the same door, and we're going two different routes. It's just the way it is. So
it takes that, though. I mean, you can't just have a bunch of people that think the same way, because you're not going to get anything done.
No. And I don't surround myself with yes men. And a lot of the people around me, and there's not one of them around me that's a yes man. They all have opinions. But they're all good at what they do, you know, in their own right. They're all experts in their field. And so I listen to them. You know, and I always tell people that I have two different types of conversations. I have ones that start with a question, and that's when I want your info. And then I have another one that's a statement, you know, but most of the people around me, everything starts with a question, because I'm interested. I want to know, you know, I feel like I want to get from point A to point B, and I feel like this is the route to do it, but you're the expert. What am I missing? Is there something I'm missing here? And that's where to get from here to here. You know, and that's why I surround myself with a lot of people that I can trust.
Yeah.
So
talk about the steel business. Like, what do y'all do, and how did that get started?
Well, it goes back to how we got started in the business. My father was a plumber, and then he got out from the commercial and residential plumbing, went into building water treatment plants. So we went from building residential to building wastewater treatment plants, putting in pipelines for cities, for municipals, for the city of New York, the city of Los Angeles, Las Vegas. That's where it started. And as I was coming up into high school and coming out of high school with all intentions in going into that business, and I worked for that business as a draftsman throughout high school, you know, AutoCAD and project management. He sold that business my senior year. So when he sold that business, he got bored and wanted to do something else. So he went off and found this company, it's Fort Worth F&D Head Company. And basically what they do is we build tank heads and roll cylinders for pressure vessels. So we build pressure vessel parts. We don't build a pressure vessel itself, but we build the parts for it. He bought that company with the intent to flip it. He just wanted to take it. It was an old company at that time. I believe it was 40 years old. And he wanted to buy the company, add some value, put some of the right people there, and then turn around and flip it and then go do it again. Well, it turned out to be a blessing. And the people that he put around him, and just to watch the success, and I'm not going to say it was easy success by any means, but we were blessed to have the right people at the right time, and it all just clicked. So at that time, I was out of high school. I had gotten into concrete, building houses, building metal buildings, and I'd gotten away from working with my dad, because that was about the time we figured out that we were not the same. So I had left, and he came to me and wanted me to go to work for that company. So I came to work. I left the construction, shut all my construction companies down, and went to work for that company. And then I guess that would be in the early 2000s, about 2003 is whenever we did that. And that's our primary business now. And then since then, I've taken a couple of partners, and we've started another company that is Precision Fabrication Services. And what we do is we add value to material. So we will bring plate in, we will laser cut it, press break it, drill it, weld fitments. And then, so that company is for all fabricators, whether you're building staircases or you're building John Deere building combines. We'll cut parts for people for for building combines. We'll cut parts for people building trailers. So that one is more wide open in any type of aspect of metal fabrication, but we're just a service. We don't start and finish any one product, and I do that on both sides of the fence, whether that's on Fort Worth F&D or whether that's on Precision Fabrications. Is we're a supporter. We want to support all of the manufacturers, whether they're building vessels or building trailers or building tractors or building trucks.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of your customers in those companies? Like just big companies is who you're servicing? On
the Fort Worth F&D side, it goes from small guys to building anything from building Cowboy cookers all the way up to some of the largest compressor manufacturers and vessel manufacturers in the country.
Okay.
So that one's wide open. And it's the same thing for Precision. We've got some guys that are sitting in their garage and they're building, they've come up with something and they just don't want to, the equipment's gotten to be so expensive that it's hard to come up with a product and then justify the cost of these lasers, these plasmas, the press brakes, the drills. So what we are is they've sent us a drawing. We build that part for them. We bend it, we cut it, bend it, weld it, and then send it to them, and they finalize it. Mm-hmm. And that's the same as on the head side. And the cylinders, we got these vessel shops, and we will make their tank heads, and we will roll their cylinders. And those go anywhere from 10 gauge all the way up to 3.5 inches thick. So we've got in order to do that, you have to have a lot of different equipment. So it's hard for all the manufacturers these days. Most manufacturers these days are assembly, with the labor shortages that we have these days. And, there's not a lot of skilled fabricators much anymore. Not a lot of skilled fitters and welders. And, every year we get fewer and fewer of them. So what's happening is, but on the same side, the companies have to get bigger and bigger because your margins get smaller and smaller. So the vessel guys, I can't justify going out there and buying a whole plate roll line to do from 1/4 inch up to 3 inches thick. So they'll lean on us. It's up to us to go do that, but it takes several customers in order to justify that. So we're basically just a supporter for any type of fabrication.
So y'all kind of like specialized in kind of a niche, and then also scaled it big enough to where y'all can support that. That's
correct. What we did when we first bought Fort Worth F&D, where my dad bought it, he went in and they just made a certain size of tank heads. There was a very small scale and a small assortment of different sizes and shapes, because again, we go from 6 5/8 inches in diameter all the way up to 16 foot in diameter. And when we would go in, we would see we have the president of the company. He would go to the customer and he would look at them and he'd look and say, okay, you're buying this size from me now, but how do I get all of your work? And then basically they give us their list of, okay, this is everything that we buy. So then we started looking at the volumes, and then we would decide, okay, well, let's step up to this piece of equipment. And then we'd get a handful of those customers, we could justify that one. Mm-hmm. And then we would go to the next one and do the same thing. And it's the same on the precision fabrication side. You get in with somebody, then you start asking questions because you're supporting.
Yeah.
So you say, okay, how else can I support you? What else do you have? And that's how we got into the rolling of the cylinders, to plate rolling, because primarily when we bought Fort Worth F&D, it was just tank heads. That's what they did. But our background from the wastewater treatment pipe and the pipelines is we rolled plate. We made pipe. So we just took that knowledge that we had, changed up the equipment a little bit, and brought it in and started rolling cylinders for pressure vessels. So we're always looking to add value. We like to deal with one customer, and we want to exhaust everything that one customer has, whether it's a burnt part, a bent part, whatever it is. We want to exhaust everything so that these people are busy. People want to cut one PO, they want to call one person, and they want to give you a whole laundry list of parts. And that's how we built our business. Was we would ask, hey, give us everything. What are you looking at for this job? And if we can do it, then we'll quote it. And if we can't do it, we're going to look into it to see what do we got to do in order to be able to take care of your entire list.
Yeah,
the whole scope of that work.
You increase on y'all's end, you increase the lifetime value of the customer, so you don't have to go out, have a salesman going out finding new customers, new prospects, and doing all that, you can just focus on this one, increasing the value of that one.
Absolutely.
And a lot of business people talk about that, just increasing, instead of focusing on more marketing, more sales, getting more customers, which costs more money. You can just focus on this one, and how can we get the most amount of value, or provide the most amount of value to this customer.
Right. Yes.
What are some pros and cons to scaling like that? Because a lot of people, when they build a business or decide to open their own business, it seems like, because I've done it myself, it's like if I can just instead of making 150 over here, I go make 150 and I was the boss. They just create a job for themselves, whereas y'all going in and scaling those companies so big to where it's an actual business. Like, I assume you could probably step away, or your dad could step away and not have to be there in the day-to-day. What are some pros and cons to scaling big and thinking big like that?
People. Finding the right people. That's my primary job, as the owner. I say, I have to look at the 30,000-foot view on every operation that I have. And then so I'm looking at 30,000 foot. You've got to have somebody there looking at the 20,000-foot view, and you got to have somebody underneath them looking at the 10,000-foot view. And then you got to have the whole group of people on the ground levels carrying it out. Mm-hmm. The hardest thing that I see people on growth and scale where they struggle is finding that second tier. It's finding that group of people, or that one person in that operation that truly cares about the business that you have, but you have to hand over the keys. And that's the hard part. You got to find somebody that you trust. In order to do that, you're going to lose some. Mm-hmm. But I think the biggest thing is, especially somebody growing from the beginning, from the ground, it's their baby. They've put everything into it. They've created every single bit of it, and you just don't want to let go. But in order, like I said earlier, there's only so many hours in the day. You only have so much energy. You only have so much that you can invest in something every single day. So to grow it, by the time you decide you want to grow, typically you're already tapped out. So now you're out there looking for somebody, and then you're like, I'm going to give you, the keys. And that's the hardest part, I would say. The finding that one next person, but that person also has to find, and you have to help them find the next person. Yeah. So I would definitely say it's people. It's finding the people that you can trust and that are knowledgeable enough. And also, like I said earlier, don't be the smartest one in the room. Don't go find somebody that's looking at that 20,000-foot view that you're smarter than, because then you just handle it yourself.
That's what Alex Hormozy says about hiring. A lot of people, like the interviews I see, is like people ask him about hiring somebody, and he says, usually I want to interview people and I want to learn something in that interview. And if somebody else can teach me something about this certain thing that I'm hiring for, I'd probably hire them. Yeah. Because they're going to be smarter in that one area. Absolutely. How do you find those people? I would say pretty much in any business, that's what I probably hear the most of. I mean, my dad's an electrician. He can't find people. He can't find people to do ranch jobs. It's hard in any industry. Right. So how do y'all go about that? I'd say a lot of them actually come to us, in word of mouth, knowing people. And also, I don't necessarily have to find somebody that's in that industry and already has that job, because typically if they're in the industry and they already have that job, then you're going to have struggle to get them over. Mm-hmm. You just got to find somebody that has a foundation, somebody that's willing to learn, and somebody that has an open mind. I'm a believer, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you have the key fundamentals that you want to learn and you want to grow, and you have the heart and you have the hustle, then you can thrive in nearly every industry. Mm-hmm. So I'm always I'm always looking out, no matter what circle I'm in, what group of people I'm in, I'm always looking for those people that have that foundation. And I'm sitting back thinking, okay, what can I create that would fit that person? So that's how I do it. I think Jeff was telling me that story about Preha, right? Yeah. That's how you got him. He was actually, Preha he working for a contractor. We fabricate and build all of our own buildings and have forever. So when we would decide to build a new facility, a new shop, we would bring in the steel, the I-beam. My grandfather being a structural engineer, I would tell him what we need. My father would tell him what we need. He would get us
give us a set of drawings. We would bring it in. We would fabricate all the beams and trusses, and then we would bring an erection crew. And Prodejo came in on that erection crew and worked for us through another contractor, I said, for a couple of years. And then that contractor went off, and we hired him. And what we would do is we would take him. He can do anything. He's probably one of the most intelligent men that I've ever met in my life. We would take him, and he would either be on a welder, on a plate roll, in a machine shop. Whenever I'd bring, all of our equipment comes in from Germany and Italy. It's specially made. Well, when it comes in containers, and we have to assemble it. So he would be on the assembly crew. So we just floated him everywhere. And then he's from Mexico and has a family and has a ranch in Mexico, and probably been with us for 6 or 7 years, and decided he wanted to go back home. So he went home, and I didn't see him for 5 or 6 years probably. And he just showed up one day at the office and wanted a job. And by that time, we had really started to grow the ranch, and I really needed that one guy that could do everything. And I asked him, and I knew that he'd come from his family ranch. And I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question. Do you want to be here in Fort Worth at the shop, or do you want to be at the ranch? And he said, well, I'd rather be at the ranch. That sounds a lot better. Yeah. So I made a deal with him that day, and we drove down and looked at the ranch, introduced him to everybody. He's been there ever since. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, always just looking for people, you know, and to build upon them, you know, but you got to have that foundation.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I've come to learn just from listening and being around people and doing this. And then also, like, in my own life, kind of starting to pay attention, is I would rather be around somebody with the right attitude and work ethic, and no matter what we're doing, especially like day working is you're in all different types of situations, and you may not like it as much as doing it a different way. But the person that can thrive in an uncomfortable situation, or situation that they may not like, and have a good attitude about it, and you can have fun around in a bad situation, it's like, dang, I'll go do that anywhere.
Yep. I definitely don't mind the hard times, or, you know, when things get difficult, because that's a challenge. Mm-hmm. I like them. But one thing you will not hear, whether you're at our operations here in Fort Worth or you're at our operations in Comanche, you'll never hear anybody holler, scream. It's just not how we don't get hot, you know, and I think you got to keep a cool head. And it's that way. I've never raised my voice at the shop. I get frustrated, sure enough, but I think that's a show of weakness for sure. Yeah. But, you know, you got to, like you said, you got to thrive, because that's what builds character. If you can't thrive in the hard times, you can't thrive when everything's coming down around you. And I can stay cool under the collar simply because I know that the people around me, that we can carry it. Mm-hmm. That there's nothing that we can get into that we're not going to get out of. We're going to succeed. It may not be quick, it may not be easy, but we are going to succeed. Yeah. So, and that goes back to the people around me. You know, I can't stress enough how much the group around me is, how good they are. Mm-hmm. You know, and that would definitely be the success to all of our operations, is our people. Yeah. So, and, you know, people see that. You know, remember, we don't struggle, especially at the ranch, finding people, because the people that I have around us, you know, they're all respected in the industry. They're all good at what they do. They've all got great reputations, and when they come, they see it. You know, our ships usually run pretty smooth. Mm-hmm. You know, but that's not by chance. Yeah. You know, that's because of who we have out there. And the same thing here in Fort Worth at our operations here. It's always tough because, you know, they say try to be sustainable. Well, there's really no such thing as sustainable. You're either moving forward or you're falling backwards. Because if you're sitting still in the middle, you're really falling backwards. You're losing ground. So we've always got to be moving forward. So there's never complacency in our operations. So with that, it takes a special kind of person to work in our operations, because we're growing every day, whether it's growing in sales or just trying to get better at what we do. I'm always pushing to do better. I'm not going to say things aren't good enough ever, but they're never perfect. Mm-hmm. So, and, you know, the thing about it is, you're never going to be perfect, but you can sure enough try every day to, you know, squeeze a little bit out. But it takes a certain kind of person. A lot of people want to get into something, and once things are okay, they want to be left alone. They don't want to be pushed anymore. And those people typically don't last, you know, around our operations. So I like the people that want to grow. I like the people that want to see it get better and take pride in the struggle. Yeah. So like you said, you get around, sometimes you get in a cow fight. You know, if somebody's losing their cool, can't handle it, they probably not going to, you know, be around long, because there's always going to be a cow fight. Yeah. You know?
Nothing's ever going to go perfect.
No. No, but that's what I enjoy about it, is because, like I said, I've day worked with, some friends, and you get to some places, and like I said, you get that attitude, and it's just from the time you step your horse off the trailer, it's just like, it's a beating.
Yeah.
Until you leave and you're like, I just want to get out of here and I don't ever want to come back. And I always make sure that when people come to work with us, that they don't see that.
Yeah.
It's like, I want, from the time they step their horse off to the time that they leave, they want to come back. But it's not easy. We still have plenty of troubles and things like that, but it's all about how you carry them out.
That's what I told Shady after we came up there and helped. I think she just came during the Cobra works, and I was like, man, it's like being on a vacation over there. It's just easy, and even if I did get run over by some of y'all's wild little crossbred calves, it was still fun.
Yep.
And just like that, there's challenges with those crossbred, cows and calves. They're a little wilder and stuff, but we got through it just fine.
Absolutely. Colby takes care of all the Cobra side of things. Every aspect, the day-to-day on the Cobra, Colby takes care of it. And, he knows that whenever the wild bunches get in there, he knows when to put them in, who to put in, who to have on the ground. And that's what it takes. You got to have somebody that sees the big picture, the whole picture. They're not going to put somebody in there that gets hot and goes fast when they get, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing that we have here in Fort Worth. The people that are in their positions, they know the right people to put on each job to make it go as smoothly as possible, because no matter what job it is, there's going to be problems.
Mm-hmm. I heard Jocko talking about, on his podcast, that's a lot of military people, pretty much exclusively military people. And they were talking about, I guess Jocko went back and he was like a trainer or whatever. He was like part of the heads of buds or something, and was training these other guys, and they were in some kind of simulation deal, simulating a battle, and he had another guy with him, and he was saying that they're right there with the guys that are actually doing the battle. And they're kind of lost. There's bullets flying and all this explosion and all this stuff going on, and he said these guys are just kind of like lost. But Jocko and the other guy are standing back there right with, getting the same perspective, but they're standing back and they're detached from the situation, and they can see exactly, they're having a conversation, and like, dang, from this point of view, like when you detach yourself, you can see exactly what you need to do. And he's like, yeah, if you can detach yourself from the situation, no matter what it is, whether it's in business or ranching or war, you can zoom out and see, what all pieces need to work and where you need to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be able to step back. Have to, and that's one thing. It's easy to get latched onto it and just try to muscle your way through something. And typically it's just one fight after the next. And it's hard to sometimes pull the reins back. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to stop, back up, look around and say, where are we headed? Yeah. What's going on? See the big picture. Yeah. So it's difficult at times, but you have to.
Yeah. So. Yeah. At least one person, needs to be looking at that, the leader of the group, whether it's the ranch manager, the owner, somebody's got to be like, this is, maybe we need to stop and regroup.
Right. And that, Jeff Davis runs Taylor Land and Cattle, and he runs my father's operation, and he also runs my operation. And having somebody like him that sees the everyday, day to day, and then him and I get to sit back at the 30,000 foot view. And when I get to watch everything, and then when it's all quiet and nobody's around, if I have questions, I'll go to him and say, hey, why did we do it like this? What do you think about doing it this way? And tell me what I'm missing. But having somebody, especially, and everybody knows Jeff. Yeah. If you want to talk about somebody that's got a level head, they don't come any more level than Jeff Davis. Yeah. So, but being able to have somebody like that, and I've got somebody like that in every operation that I have.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the ranching operation in both aspects. I know you're involved, just like you explained, it's very tiered, and that's probably why it goes so smooth every time we go over there and work, because you or your dad or whoever, you're involved in both operations, as the owner or somewhat the owner, represent the owner, whatever you want to call it. And then you have Jeff, the manager, and then you have your guys, your ranch hands, whatever you want to call them. And how that flows, and y'all don't step on each other's feet.
No.
You know exactly what's going on, and you can tell you're involved and you're working right alongside everybody, but you're probably getting more of that, like you said, the 30,000 foot view. And then you have Jeff kind of looking at a little bit under that, and then you got your other guys that are just implementing what y'all have passed down.
Absolutely. And like I said, that goes in every operation that we have, whether it's the ranching or up here in Fort Worth. Is I think one of the worst things a guy can do as an owner is don't be plugged in every single day and then show up on game day and start calling shots.
Yeah.
You know, and that always rubbed me wrong when I was a kid. So Jeff's the ranch manager. So he's a coach every single day. So whether we're weaning, we're branding, I show up just like you. If you're day work, I'm day work. And I tell Jeff that. You just pencil me in and you tell me I'm there from the neck down. You tell me where you want me. And if I see something, but I'm always looking, I'm always watching. And I'm not necessarily watching at the people. I'm watching in Fort Worth, we're assembly. So flow is everything. We make our money, we make our margins literally in minutes. If I can cut a minute off of something, we get more margin. So when we're moving cattle through, I'm watching how they're going through the pens. I'm watching whether we want a tub or a bud box, or and I'm asking other people, hey, how can they? Just something doesn't seem right. It just seems like things aren't going as smoothly as possible. So while things are happening, I'm constantly watching the flow of things, and then, like I said, once the dust settles, that's when I'll step back and I'll ask Jeff, or Colby, depending on whether it's the Cobra side or the TLC side, is how can we make this a little bit better? And by doing that, sometimes people do it that way. They've always done it that way. They've never thought to look at another direction. So you kind of get stuck in that rut. So me coming in and saying, hey, what if? It kind of opens their eyes. Like, well, I've never really thought of it like that. But we got to think if we do that, every action has a reaction. Mm-hmm. So if we do that, maybe we have a problem over here. It's like, well, let's address that problem. And those conversations cannot happen with everybody, because one, you get too many opinions, and two, you start stepping over toes. So our rule is always, if the people that work for Jeff have a question, that question needs to go to Jeff. Don't ask me. So, and therefore, don't ever cut around. And it's that way in every operation that I have. Everybody answers, and I'm very strict about it. If you walk up to me and ask me a question, it's like, well, have you asked your supervisor that same question? Well, yeah, I ran it past them, but I haven't got an answer back. Like, that's a problem, So I think it's important to keep, in order to have the people around you that have a good foundation, that have the ability to carry things, you can't step on their toes. You got to give them their runway. You got to give them their room, and you got to trust them. You either trust them or you don't. And if you trust them, then trust them. Let them have it. So that's always been big for me. And that was one thing that I can say I learned from my father. I saw him coming up, and he called every single shot. Didn't matter what it was. But he had people that could not carry it to the next, so he had to do that. Mm-hmm. The people that he had around him, he had to kind of hold their hand. Yeah. So, and as that was in the earlier businesses, and as we got into the Fort Worth F&E, that's when we kind of started opening. He started opening up and bringing some more people in, because one, we didn't know anything about building tank heads, so we had to lean on some other people. So, but by doing that, I got to see, okay, if you put the right person in and you trust them and you give them the runway, and then you just support them. That's my job. My job every day is to go to every single business that I have, take that 30,000 foot view and see where the holes are, and then start asking my questions. What have you not done that created that hole? It's not go to the shop and stomp and holler and what's happening over here. It's usually, that was one thing my dad told me. He's like, if you ever see a problem, you need to see what you did, or what you didn't do, because it's your job to make sure everybody's got their tools.
Everything's your fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Extreme ownership.
Absolutely. Yes. So, and own that, and
I think it all comes down, like you said, to accountability. Is if you're having, like I said, I've worked on a bunch of different operations, and you get those guys that want to micromanage every little step, even though, your guys are probably already taking that step to do that deal. And then when somebody tells you, hey, go do that, it's like,
it changes.
It
changes the atmosphere.
Kind of ticks you off a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you can sit back and just hold your guys accountable and get rid of the people that do a bad job or create chaos or whatever it is. A lot of people just don't want to have that conversation, and then that creates chaos around the whole operation.
Right.
And I mean, a lot of people talk crap about the Cowboy code or whatever you want to call it. Like a lot of operations, when you go usually west, you know, you're accountable. Like you have a hole, and if you don't fill that hole, it's on you. The other guys are going to cover their holes, and then this is your hole. So if a cow gets by you, it was your fault. And if a cow gets by over there, you don't got to worry about it. It was that guy's fault or whatever. You know, there's all those little mannerisms that some people talk crap about, but it gives a level of structure and accountability to where you can depend on your next guy, where you're not trying to cover the whole deal.
Exactly. Yep. And that's the thing, is everybody that is in their position, that's their hole. Mm-hmm. Cover it. You know, and if something gets through, it's on you, and let's get together and figure out what we're going to do. And if it's because I'm not giving you enough support, then you just got to tell me. Yeah. I can't cover, this hole's too big. Yeah. You gave me too much, you know, and not enough to work with, you know, and that's typically when you're growing, that's what's hard, is because as you're growing, just because you grow in one aspect, you're taking resources away from something else. So you're growing over here, but you're robbing resources over here. So your focus is here. And that's the hard part, is while you're trying to grow, is trying to watch over here at the same time. And like I said, if you're just one man, you can't cover all of them. Yeah. You know, it's sure, it gets to a point, at some point of scale, that you cannot cover every one of them. You have to have the people there, but you have to have the people there that are willing to let you know also that, hey, this is more, you know, because that person, that they're in that hole because they said they want more, I can handle it. But then it comes to a point where they get overwhelmed and they have to stick their hand up and say, okay, hey, time out. I call calf rope. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got to do something different here, because now I'm not able to cover the whole thing and things. And I find there's a lot, there's a whole lot less people that are willing to tell you that, hey, I can't cover this whole hole. Yeah. You got to give me more support. More people, they just clam up and they let it fall apart. Mm-hmm. And then you got to start all over. Yeah. You know? So trying not to wash people out or let them get burnt out is tough, especially when you're constantly in growth. Yeah.
You're trying to, it's hard to say, I can't handle this. So you have to almost judge it for them and kind of see from your perspective.
Yeah. And that's another thing. What the difficult part about growing is personalities. One, finding people, and then I find myself, I can have a conversation one way with one person, and I have to have the same conversation a completely different way with somebody else. Learning personality is one of the hardest things for growth, because everybody reacts differently to every situation. And like you said, people don't like to be micromanaged, especially people that are good at what they do. They don't like to be micromanaged. But like I tell people, there's a difference also between being managed and micromanaged. So sometimes you have to have a conversation and say, hey, you're not quite seeing the whole picture. You know, let's change up what you do here, but you can't necessarily have that same conversation one way as you can with this guy over here. So you've got to figure out the personalities and try to explain to them, it's like, I'm not micromanaging, I'm just managing. Yeah. You know, that's my job. My job is to make sure to manage the whole thing. So I find myself, you know, Jeff and I laugh sometimes. She says, well, what's going on? So it's just another day at the daycare, you know, just trying to make sure to keep everybody's feelings good. Yeah. You know, and it gets that way at times. But that's the most difficult thing I would say, is matching personalities. Mm-hmm. Because somebody that's good enough to be in that hole typically wants to be left alone. But then at the same time, everybody's got to be managed. I have to be managed. Yeah. So, and that's probably one of the hardest ones.
Just like you said, setting that structure up and knowing that I do have if you're at the top of the structure, you know, you do have the final say, so you can override or, you know, point in different directions or something. Yeah. And they're just going to have to accept that, basically. Right.
There comes a point now when it's a draw, somebody's got to make the final call. Yeah. And say, okay, we may not like it, but this is the direction we're going to go. And when I'm always pushing the envelope, there's a lot of people that tell me, I just don't think it's going to work. Okay. Well, we're going to find out if it works or not. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, I'm fine with saying, hey, that didn't work. We're not doing that again. Let's try something different next time. But I won't ever back up to where we started. Because if I see this got to get better, well, we'll try this. And if it didn't work and I push us, let's go this direction. It didn't work. Well, we'll back up, but we're looking for another direction. And that's why I say,
It's a win either way. Either you learned or you won.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the weakest things for a guy in business is to not admit when he was wrong. You know, for a guy that can't say I was wrong, that didn't work, that was a bad idea. You know, you've got to be humble enough to say that just didn't work, and that's 100% on me.
Yeah, you just sit back and like, well, that wasn't a good idea.
No, and I do it quite often. So, but when you're trying to grow, you're pushing the envelope all the time. You know, all the easy wins came early. You know, but once you get to a certain point, every win after that is difficult. Yeah, and it's it's hard. So, but
do you think so? Like your background, you were farming and ranching some as a kid, but like were you basically learned the cowboy code and applied it to business? Did you just learn that in business, or were you around some cowboys and it kind of?
What I did is, so I was coming up in our business, and I started taking. We started letting some of our lease places come back to us and started buying some cows. I had no idea what I was doing. So, and just by chance, Colby Hunt, my main facility, both of my shops are right across the street from Pete Bond's. You know, we were literally neighbors, and met Colby through another friend, and we started hanging out. Well, I took interest in, I was telling him what I was trying to do at our ranch and what I was doing. I was running things past him. Again, I knew he knew more about it, and I knew that he was in the world. He knew the industry, and he knew the people. So I basically just drug along with him, you know, and he would bring me on to a branding or to a weaning or processing, and I was just sitting back watching, trying to figure out, like, okay, how are you guys doing it? Because if you want to know how to process cattle, you know, Pete Bonds, they process a lot of cattle.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go do that somewhere in Comanche. There's nobody out there at that level. So I would just sit back and I'd pay attention. And I literally sat down one day and told Colby, like, I want you to write me up like a handbook, essentially, you know, of when I'm processing. What do I need to give? Why do I need to give it? Because again, I didn't grow up in that world. So leaning on him, and then by doing that, Pete took an interest in me because I showed him that, you know, I don't need to be here, but I want to be here and I want to learn this industry. I have a real want, you know, and a passion for this industry, but I want to do it good. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it as well as anybody else. And it doesn't matter whether that's cutting hay, running yearlings, running, you know, commercial cow-calf, steel business. I want to do it as good as anybody else. But in order to do that, you have to be around the people that are going to teach you that. So, but how I learned the cowboy ethics or the cowboy ways is tagging along, paying attention, being there from the neck down and just watching and being coachable. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that I think a lot of people miss. You know, I may not necessarily have to be out there day working. I want to be, but I like to be horseback. You know, who doesn't like to be on a good horse, you know, and good cattle? But at the same time, I want to learn something every single time I'm out. So constantly, and you pick out the good hands. You know, you see the guys that are really good and you just kind of lean on them. How do you do that? What'd you do? What's the trick?
Yeah.
What'd you see that I didn't see? So,
did you see after you got into that, did you see that there was a cross there in what you're doing with your business and then how the Cowboys work?
I guess I probably brought...
From my perspective, sitting here talking to you, it seems like there's just a lot of similarities. So I was just seeing if
I would say that I probably brought more of the efficiencies from my business into the ranching, more so than I took the ranching into my business, as I would say.
Yeah, it just seems to me like talking to you, there's a lot of cross on how you... I mean, ranching, if you're going to have a ranch, that's a business too. So you can take stuff from the mainstream business world and cross it over and vice versa.
Yes, absolutely. And that's like when we go buy land, we try to buy the sorriest, cheapest land we can.
Mm-hmm. You know, some value add.
Yeah, and then add value, no different than what we do. You know, in Fort Worth, I buy a piece of plate and add value to it. You know, in Comanche, I buy a piece of ground and I add value to it. And then we put something on top of that. And then once that set of cows is on there, then it's, okay, get that set of cows as efficient and as productive as possible for that piece of ground. And that was another thing I learned, you know, with being around, you know, Colby's and Jeff and Pete's and people like that, is you've got to match your ground. You got to match your cattle to your ground, whether that's yearlings or cow-calf or however you want to look at it. And it's no different than what I do in Fort Worth. So it's the same thing. I've got a piece of equipment that I've got to match a certain product to. And there's certain efficiencies that if I want to tweak that part just a little bit, well, now I'm not as efficient in this piece of equipment. And it's the same thing out there. If I've got one place that's solid Bermuda grass, I'm going to run it one way. If I got another place that's solid Klein grass, I'm going to run it a different way. So trying to always find I guess my biggest thing is efficiencies.
Yeah.
On any end of it. And that even goes as far as when we go in and we buy a place and we want to clear that place off. What's the most efficient way to get in and get out? Not necessarily the cheapest, but the most efficient, to where we can add the value back and get this thing back into production as quickly as possible. So
That's what I've talked about several times. Is like my place that I have leased is real rough and brushy, and the fences aren't real good, so I put a bunch of horned cows, longhorns and Corrientes down there, which I think suits that place very good because of the setup. But I'm not going to wean a $2,000 calf off of it. I'm going to wean a $1,000, $1,200 calf.
Right.
And I've got less money. But if you have a Bermuda grass field, maybe you want to put a big 1,200 pound cow on there. Everybody's got their favorite, breeds or kinds of livestock that they want to. That's what they want to do. But like you said, just look at it and be like, what would make me the most money here?
Yeah. And that's I like a certain type of cow, but I lean on Jeff and I lean on Colby because it's their job to make the most money off that place. So there comes a point where I'll get a place ready, and once the fences are up, I'll lock the gate, hand them a key, and then it's up to them. You stack this place with whatever's most productive. We tried a little bit of everything, and that's it's overwhelming at times because, like I said, I'm always trying to push the envelope, trying to figure out what's best. We've tried fall calvers. We've tried spring calvers. We've tried yearlings. We've done everything on our ground to see what the most productive for our part of the world is, because nobody was doing it. We didn't have anybody to go off of and say, okay, well, they're running yearlings. So for a few years, we planted a lot of wheat, ran a lot of wheat pasture cattle. And I can say our gains were great. Our death losses were great, but it didn't fit our country. So we took those places and put them back into grass, and then handed it back over to Jeff and say, okay, what are you going to do with this place now? Now that, you stock this place, you take care of the grass on it and you make it more productive. Now that we've figured out, we've tried these other things that we didn't know if they would work, and they just weren't for us. So now we've kind of, that's I guess what I meant earlier about, we've kind of found our niche. Now it's just kind of like, okay, let's take what we do now. We know that this is the best for this part of the world, and let's just push that. Let's get as much out of it as we can on this track.
So talk about that, about what does TLC look like and Cobra look like? What are y'all doing on those operations?
Most everything we're doing now is all just everything we're doing just commercial cow calf. Jeff on the TLC side, primarily everything is Angus Brangus, red and black. Mostly run white bulls, and then he's got a lot more cattle to look at, and because we're in Comanche County, Eastland County, and Fannin County, so that seems to work good for us. We're basically growing pounds. At the end of the day, we're trying to figure out how many pounds can we put on a truck, but at the same time, the quality of the pounds. So, and that's where Jeff comes in. And I can't tell you the method, his madness. He's great at what he does. Cobra doesn't run quite as many, so it's more of a specialized. So, but it takes a different type of marketing. So Colby runs a bigger cow, a crossbred cow, but he has to market them a little bit different. But the places that Colby's running are quite a bit different in grass. There's more of a native grass than there is the Bermuda grass on what Colby's running. So but everything is just commercial cow calf. Everything's, spring calvers and commercial cow calf, and then, we'll wean and ship them off and start over.
Y'all aren't retaining the calves after you pull them off the cows anymore?
No, we've talked about it and just trying to figure out when the right time is and the right place where we can keep them. I like the idea. We're wanting to get there, just don't know when that's going to happen quite yet.
And then y'all make hay too. Is that just for y'all's operation?
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. So we've got some irrigated fields in our area that we primarily and that's what one of my biggest things over the last couple of years is in our area, you're going to feed hay. It'd be great to think that you don't have to, but we do. We can minimize how much hay in the winter that we do, just by our rotations. But at the end of the day, we have to. So what we've tried to do is rather than going to, we're pretty spread out from one end of our country to the next. We may be in a 30, 40 mile circle. So what we try to do is we try to make all of our hay production is on one place now. And we've invested in irrigation and pivots and things like that. And we manage that place to grow all the hay for all three operations. That's for Cobra, for TLC, and my dad's operation as well.
Yeah, just same way, making it efficient as possible.
Right. And that goes into, we try to get as much done. You know, the equipment we have is I want to get in, I want to lay a lot of it down, and I want to get in there in the next 3 to 4 days, and I want to get it up and get it out of the field, and I want to get the fertilizer back on top of it and get the water turned back on, so we can start the process over rather than being strung out, because we run a small crew.
You're not having to be on the road, either roading that equipment somewhere else or hauling it somewhere else.
And we've done that. And by having all of our hay in one spot, you know, if somebody's got a place 15 miles away, they're not worried about their rotation that they got to cut and bale that. So they're able to take that place and they're able to rotate on it, get as much out of it, and carry that grass into the winter as long as possible, because they don't have to worry about, well, we're going to cut and bale that field. You know, on a year like this, we did go cut and bale some dry land just because, you know what they say, if it rains, you know, make hay when it rains, you know. So we did go to a few places, but historically we're trying to put everything in one spot and let the cows have the others.
So you're always looking for a better way of doing things and efficiency. So how long do you think it'll be till you have it figured out?
Never. And that's what I like about it. Honestly, I don't know. You know, we're going to try every single day. Like I said, nothing could ever be perfect. You can try every day to get as close as you can, but I get up every day. I have to be growing. I have to be trying to make something better. I have to be efficient, and I have to be productive. And I guess if everything got to be as perfect as possible, I wouldn't have anything to do.
Yeah, you'd get bored.
Yeah. So it's like I've always told people, I've always chased success, and I've always chased quality in what we do. That'd be my driving fuel is, and I've never chased a dollar. I've never been interested. I've never said I can make X amount of money, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make all my decisions to make X amount of money, because I've always said you're never going to get the last dollar. So you're constantly chasing a ghost. So as long as there's something to improve, I've got something to go after, you know, and then I can achieve that and put that feather in my hat and then go to the next one. So.
What's the best piece of financial advice you've ever got?
Ooh. You know, make your money work for you. And that's a hard one for people to understand. And that's, you know, take your money and put it somewhere where it's going to make money for you. You know, your money has to work for you. Money's a tool. And once a guy can realize that money's not for spending, you know, it's not to go necessarily buy everything that you want. It's just a tool. It's no different than that cow sitting out there or that piece of equipment sitting there. If it's not working, then, you know, you're not gaining anything.
Business owners could use an extra $1,000. You could put it towards a vacation, new equipment, or marketing for your business. Or if you're a horse owner, blow it on them. Right now at Diversified Payments, we're offering $1,000 cash if we can't beat your current credit card processing rate. If your business is doing $20,000 or more a month in credit or debit card sales, fill out the form below and you're going to get either $1,000 in cash or even more in savings with us at Diversified Payments.
So most important thing to me is that I've heard is make it always work for you. Make money for you.
Yeah, I've seen that the wealthiest people, you know, and the richest people, whatever you want to call them, you know, their whole deal is investing and not trading your time for money, but deploying, finding a niche or, you know, an industry or something where you can make a lot of money, where you're not having to work and just grind every piece of it out. You can get ahead, whether it's sales or whatever it is, creating a product, and then deploying that into real estate, into land, into buying another business or investing in the market or whatever you're going to do, but just growing that money. And so, like you said, it's out there working for you. Absolutely. So you're not having to.
Yeah. So we take and we own all of our own facilities, you know, and that's always been a big thing. My dad always told me is if you've still got your house, a roof above you, If in our industry, if you've got a building with a set of cranes in it, it's hard for a guy to put you out of business. So always taking care of your own and keeping your money, and we don't lean on outside. We try to do everything as much as possible. We try to keep as much in-house as possible. And I think that's important for what we do. We don't have to lean on a lot of people. In my main businesses, I've got just a handful of vendors. And from the time that I get the raw material in, it's all on us. So not having to lean on other people to carry our work through.
What's the most important lesson you've learned in the ranching industry?
Ooh, my goodness. Don't ever bet on the weather.
Yeah.
Don't put it all don't try to hit a home run every time. Just try to stay on base. That'd probably be the biggest one is not getting caught up in the big swings and trying to be conservative. I think that's one of the biggest ones. You see a lot of people get out there. You see a little bit of green grass out there, and it's really hard not to go
get
running.
That grass fever.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed. Like trading around and stuff, and selling some cattle is like in the spring when it goes to rain, and like it could have been just like it has been, like it was dry for years, and then there a little bit of green starts popping up, and everybody's like, "Man, I need a load of cows. I need a load of cows."
Yeah, absolutely.
And then because I did that, I learned the hard way. We made some money on some heifers that we calved out, and then I was like, "That was easy. I'm gonna do it again." Then it quit raining, and then stuck, and I was feeding them, and it went way backwards.
Right. It's easy to do. And that way in any industry. Every industry I'm in, one thing my dad told me at the very beginning was hogs get slaughtered and pigs get fat. And that rings true in every industry I've ever been in. So you just got to know when enough is enough, and you just got to, as long as you're moving forward, you're progressing, then just be okay with that.
Yeah.
So
I think when you get in a bind is when you try to make something happen.
You're right. Absolutely. And I've been there. It's easy to do. It's easy to do. Not many times that I've really pushed something that it ever came out the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So
what would your advice be to someone getting started, whether it's going into business or just say like a kid graduating high school or graduating college or something, fixing to get started in life?
Find that mentor, like I said, that's where you want to be, that can show you that path. Don't listen to the naysayers, and you got to have the drive, you got to have the want, but you've got to have a goal, and then you got to have a path to get there. So find somebody that's done what it is that you want to do, that's willing to teach you, and listen. That'd be my biggest one. And as for business, I think the number one problem that I see, I always say you've got to have a good banker that you trust, that you're willing to tell everything to. You got to have a good CPA that you trust, that you're willing to tell everything to, insurance, and a good attorney. And I always tell everybody, you got to have those four things. If you really truly want to be successful in this world, you need to find those four people that you trust, that understand what it is that you do and understand where you want to go, and then listen. At the end of the day, I've been in weld metal, so I'm not a finance guy.
Yeah.
So I have a really good finance guy. I'm not a banker. I've got a really good banker, and I listen to him. And when I have questions, I pull them in, and we'll have a meeting, and find the people that you trust. Find the people and lean on them. Don't ever think that you can do it just on your own, your way, and you're going to reinvent it, because money's pluses and minuses. Find somebody that truly understands it.
That it seems like, that's a big message here is people has been a big part of your life.
That's absolutely it.
Do you think you kind of got lucky, or did you purposely seek out to find good people?
I don't know. I think I've always tried to find good people. I like to be around good people. But blessing is the reason why the people that are in my life, it's always blessed to have that opportunity.
If you're working on yourself and you become a high level person, then you're going to attract other high level people.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Yes. Yeah.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, goodness. I like Clay Pigeon in Fort Worth right now. That's a good one.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
Is it a steakhouse or what is that?
Yeah, it's a steakhouse. It's over off Camp Bowie, I believe.
I have to try that out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And just since I know y'all go hunting and go on vacation some, and y'all were on vacation the other day. What's your favorite place to go on vacation?
Oh, Montana. Wyoming, Montana. I've got
kind of on an RV or
yeah. We like the RV, but probably my favorite place to be is I've got a really good friend of mine out of Cody, Wyoming. His name's Colby Hunt. I met him on an elk hunting trip, a pack trip, and so every now and then we'll go back up and just go. It's been a few years, need to do it again, but just setting a couple of pack horses and just go 10, 12, 20 miles back, find a stream, find a meadow, turn the horses into a lot, and just forget about it.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite.
I really enjoy, just being able to get away, and especially those big mountains. You get in that big mountain country and you can really get away from all kinds of civilization. And
yes. Yeah.
It's a good escape.
If somebody asked me today, what do you want to do? That's definitely the number one.
That's what your retirement looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Ken.
Absolutely.
Are you looking for any customers as a small customer in your businesses?
Always looking for customers, big or small, doesn't matter.
And how do they find that?
Fort Worth F&D both companies are on the internet, so you can look them up. It's Fort Worth F&D head company, and then Precision Fabrication Services in Saginaw, just north of Saginaw, on Business 287.
Cool. So, I'm glad to finally have you on. I feel like I was excited to pick your brain on all that, and I'm glad you came in.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll catch y'all next time on the Wealthy Cowboy Show.